Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.
Hello and welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy, and today we're talking to Penelope Leach. She's a research psychologist and one of the world's leading experts in child development and upbringing. Penelope Leach has helped millions of parents raise their children for more than 40 years with her thoroughly researched, practical, baby-led advice, her wise, empathic, and sensible perspective, and her comforting voice. She also has 2 children and 6 grandchildren of her own. She's the author of many best-selling parenting books. And the book we're going to talk about today is Your Baby and Child, Dr. Leach's classic childcare guide, which is out now in a revised and updated edition. Welcome, Penelope.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So Your Baby and Child, I know my mom had this around the house. It was first published in 1978. So it raised, many of us listening had parents who read Your Baby and Child.
Yes, we are 70s babies ourselves. So this was important. If our listeners think we turned out well, this is part of the reason.
Well, yes, but from my point of view, 50 years is a heck of a long time for a book. Mm-hmm. And it reached a point where it either had to die or be rewritten. I couldn't leave it out there knowing that it was out of date. I mean, that just didn't feel right. Of course, there've been lots of minor reprints, but the book hadn't changed along with society.
So let's start there. What are some of the things in the book that have changed in those 50 years?
Oh, wow. When I wrote it, Daddy went to work to earn money and Mommy stayed at home and looked after the baby. Not always, of course. I mean, that's a generalization, but there's been a huge change in the fact that now almost all adults go to work, and as many women are in the workplace as men, and we unfortunately don't have as many men as women in the home place. So there's a whole area of difficulty, what I think your title refers to as hell.
Yes. Fresh hells, new each day.
Everything always new, always new.
And you also make the point that there were grandmothers around back then. Like my grandmother lived with us and she helped raise us. She lived upstairs.
My grandmother lived with us as well.
Is that right? And so our grandmothers were both, of course, younger because our mothers had us when they were younger, but our mothers stayed home with us and our grandmothers also didn't work outside the home. And so we're also available for childcare. How have you seen that change, how people are raising their babies these days?
Huge change and interesting difference between the UK and the USA in that a lot of grandparents in the UK are wanted to do more childcare than they actually want to do. Whereas in the USA, it seems to be the other way around. You know, I hear quite a lot of families, how can I put this politely, who don't want grandmothers too much involved. And of course, things have changed in the sense that grandmothers used to retire at 60, and now who can afford to retire in either of our countries? So that's a big change. A lot of parents do, of course, rely on grandparents for childcare, but how many families still live close by? I mean, I know of grandparents who travel 2 or 3 hours to help out if one of the children is sick and parents need to go to work. But that's very different from being next door or,
yes, or even in the upstairs bedroom in our case, right?
I was so lucky I lived close by, but not with. And I think probably that's the ideal.
Well, even in my mother's generation, there was a they lived in a 2-family house, multi-generational family as they were moving from Ireland and coming to the United States, that the family was just naturally extended, that there were always people around. And I think that's really interesting how much that has changed, whereas no one I know, very few people I know, they might have a grandma around, but they don't live in a multi-generational house where there are different levels of family.
But another thing that's changed that's part of this is that when I wrote the book, if you were a mother, and it would almost always be a mother at home with young children, and you went out with your stroller to the park or whatever, and there would be lots of others. Now, you may be the only one in your street who's not at work, and the whole business has become much, much lonelier. And I think it is very lonely. And looking after very small children is dreadfully boring a lot of the time. I'm interested in babies and small children. It's what I've done all my adult life. But doesn't mean that I can't remember what it was like some of the time or quite a lot of the time. And boring is part of that.
Well, we say often, I think that the human connection is very lost. In some ways, I feel more connected to the idea that motherhood is difficult and boring and lonely through the online world than I think my mom did. I don't think that she was able to have as many conversations as I am able to have about how much parenting stinks sometimes. I'm able to process that online and in my communities more easily than my mom was, but I think my actual community is much smaller. So it's been kind of a give and take.
Right. One of the things that, people, when I started thinking about rewriting this book, because it is a rewrite, it's a very different book. And people said, does anybody want a book these days? All the parenting advice is online. I've found that in a way, there's too much advice coming from too many different directions, and that quite a lot of parents and their relatives and friends find it muddling and bewildering. And if you go to a different source of advice every time you hit a problem, which after all, with a new baby, maybe every Monday, let alone...
Maybe every hour, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Then you do get great confusion. So the idea is, for some people at least, a book is a solid... if you can find a book that is a voice that resonates with you, that feels right, that you can really hear, then if it's good on breastfeeding, chances are you'll like it on daycare and, discipline and the splat of food on the floor.
That's great. That's an interesting point.
It seems to me that your advice has always been very sort of baby-led, but intuitive, right? That if your baby's crying every day at 4 or 5 p.m., there are things you can do about that, but you can follow your baby's lead. And it isn't that you have to consult 18 message boards and read every article. You can read one book and you can let your baby lead you. Do you think that parents these days, with this sort of onslaught of advice and social media, do you think that they have a harder time sort of listening to their instincts and tuning out the noise?
I think parents do. I hate these generalizations, but everybody must accept that, of course, what I'm saying isn't true for everybody all the time. But on the whole, I think parents think more about their babies and very young children than they did 2 generations ago. They talk to each other about them. They talk to their parents and friends about them. And they talk to their children a lot more, I think, even though people will tell you that half the time they've got earbuds in and they're not paying any attention. On the other hand, I think there's a real time conflict for a lot of families. And one of the interesting things is how it's altered the kind of standard routines of baby care. It used to be that babies and toddlers' bedtime was 6 p.m., lights out at 7. Stick to that nowadays. You'd never see your children at all till the weekend because they're in daycare till that time. And, very small children are up and around until 9 in order to see something of their parents. So there's a kind of funny mixture of perhaps increased concern and maybe increased knowledge. I find parents know a lot more about the development of their children, certainly than I did when I started out. But at the same time, life is very divided between work and home doesn't get an awful lot of time in most households.
I want to talk a little bit more about this expansion of knowledge. We're talking to Dr. Penelope Leach, and we will be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
So before the break, we were talking about expansion of knowledge. And one of the things you cover in the book is the expansion of what we actually know about babies' sensory integration. Are there things that you really changed your mind about, or are there things that this sense and this intuitive approach that wasn't very changed by more specific information about how babies' minds work?
I think it's not that my mind has been changed. It is that I've been educated along with everybody else. And I think it's enormously important for people's enjoyment of being parents, as well as for children's enjoyment of being their kids. They should have some idea of what's going on. I mean, an obvious example is what people will call discipline, even when they're talking about a 1-year-old. Now, we know now from the last decade's work on infant brain development that there is no way you can teach an under one how to behave. His brain or her brain doesn't encompass that kind of thinking. You're too soon, mate. It can't be done. And all you do is create misery. So if I'm going in a book to say, if your baby keeps crawling to the refrigerator and opening the door and you think you're going to lose your mind, it's no good screaming at him, let alone smacking him. Distract him. It's the only thing that works. Because another thing that we've learned, if you like, part of this whole package is that if you pick such a baby up and take him into the next room or into the garden or whatever, he will have forgotten the refrigerator game in 50 seconds. So the whole thing is over. What doesn't help is having expectations of a baby or child that can't be met. I mean, it can become positively cruel.
Yes.
Some parents do make I can only describe it as a mistake when they have a second child of comparing the two. So sometimes the second child is thought to be slower than the first one, and that's kind of a negative. Again, the stuff we've learnt in the last couple of generations tells us a great deal about the developments that are going on and how different children are going to be. So it's no good wishing that your child would get on and crawl. Maybe he's never going to crawl. He may be one of those children who's going to go straight from sitting to standing up and walking. Is that a good thing? It's a real thing. It's true. It happens. And if you understand it, it helps you and the child.
Can you tell us a little bit about stress and what has been learned since this book first came out about the effects of stress on little children's development, both before they're born? This surprised me, before they're born in the womb and when they're babies and it's their own stress.
Well, the really interesting thing about stress is that we now know that stress in the mother, and I have to say mother because it is the mother, because it's all to do with her uterus, stress in the mother can affect the brain development of the fetus from conception onwards. In fact, a stress-free pregnancy is every child's right as well as every mother's right. We ought to do everything we possibly can as partners, as relations, as friends, to keep pregnancy stress-free for women, because stress is bad for the babies. And people say, well, how can that possibly, how can her stress influence the fetus? And of course, the answer is hormones, and hormones passed across the placenta to the developing baby. One of the things that happens if a mother is highly stressed is that the amount of cortisol, which is kind of one of the main stress hormones, that passes the placenta goes up. And a baby who is bathed in cortisol in the womb tends to develop an exaggerated fight-flight reaction and may actually become not just a baby, a child, adolescent, but a whole person who is always one of those who anticipates the worst and overreacts to minor problems. We all know people like that, but we don't always realize the basis of it is probably before he or she was ever born.
There's also new information in the last, 40 years since this book came out about the development of toddlers and how they understand how people think and feel, their sort of emotional education and the way that they grow. Did that change anything in this new edition of this book?
Yes, it changes it two ways. Firstly, we're clearer now. That's tremendously important. We're also clear that it links with very early development, so that a child who has warm, close parenting in the first 6 months or a year is quicker to reach that understanding of other people's feelings and behavior, quicker to be able to see at 2 that another 2-year-old might feel that way. If you like, I think probably the secret of getting on well in groups with your siblings, with other kids in daycare, if you can't see that another child feels like you do or doesn't, then you can't be a nice friend. It's no good the adults saying, use your words. Your words aren't going to work if the understanding isn't there.
I want to talk when we get back about the idea of guilt and figuring out mom's role in all of this. We're talking to Dr. Penelope Leach.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. So one of our big tasks on this podcast is helping moms figure out their role in all of this. Because we're a podcast, we offer some parenting advice and parenting perspectives. One of the things we do try to put in people's way is to let go a little bit of the guilt and this idea that the mother is responsible for everything about how this child turns out and has a tremendous amount of control over those things. How do you see in babies and toddlers areas where parents, especially mothers, can maybe find a little more joyfulness in their parenting and a little less guilt, hopefully?
Yeah. And of course, the big answer to your how is your partner. I mean, it may be the father, maybe a biological father, it may be a partner of another gender. But from the point of view, the overburdened mother, having somebody else who you trust with your child, I think is crucial. And that's difficult because however hellish we may be saying parenting is, mothering in particular is, we do anything and do anything to keep our small children safe and doing what we think they ought to do. And that means that we're really fussy about anybody else. And I think one of the mistakes that some women make is by not allowing fathers, let's call them fathers just because it's easier, but we all know it needn't be the actual father, but not letting fathers in at the very beginning. At the birth, yes, but in the months after. And if a woman is quick to jump in and tell her partner to do it differently or not to do it like that or to turn the pram round because the sun is in the baby's eyes, is not going to get the kind of mutual parenting which actually helps with this guilt stuff. I think one of the things that has changed that's relevant to this is age. You know, when I first wrote the book, the average first child was born on average in a woman's early 20s. Now it'll be her mid-30s, probably. A lot of life has gone on. She may have, I don't know, run a company or, you know, taught 30 kids in a classroom for years before she has this baby. And she very reasonably expects to be able to do it quite easily.
Yes.
And she can't, because it isn't the same. Nothing is the same. And if there's one message that I've tried to get through in the sort of new opening chapter to this book, it is that nothing will ever be the same. And that, I think, is the thing many parents, mothers and fathers, don't realize. In fact, in their efficiency, their relative efficiency and older age, they feel, give us 6 weeks and we'll be back to normal. There isn't a normal. There's only a new normal, which is them as parents. And if you're all the time expecting things to go back, you won't have your eye on where they're going forward. And we're after a bit of joy here, aren't we?
Trying to, yes.
Most babies are wanted, thank heavens. And although I've talked to a lot of parents who say they wish they'd never had children, really a surprisingly large percentage, I've never met one who wished they hadn't had their actual children. So,
Penelope, the book, so much of your advice is actually given from the point of view of the baby or the young child. And I think it's lovely, but I'm wondering, why did you choose to write the book that way?
Oh, why did I write it that way? I wrote it that way because the reason I ever wrote it was that I felt that was the point of view that was missing. I mean, if you go back to parenting advice, even of Dr. Spock, it was not from the baby's point of view. It was from the point of view of, let's get her settled into a routine so you can get some sleep, and so forth. So it was always my intention to get as close as one can, which is not very close, to getting inside the baby's head and showing parents what was actually going on in there. And I think to some extent, with colleagues, it's kind of worked. People are on the whole, I think, gentler with very small children than they were. Your country hasn't yet banned physical punishment, but I think it's less used than it was, and perhaps will go altogether, as it has in 50 countries around the world. So, there's a saying which my family uses, you can't be happier than your least happy child. And I think that's very true. And we have to acknowledge that happy children make happy parents rather than the other way around.
Penelope, let's finish by talking about, what do you see as not having changed over the last couple of generations? We have both parents working outside the home. They're not seeing their baby till 8:30 at night. They have their child in childcare instead of with their mom next door all day. What hasn't changed?
I think the main thing that hasn't changed is what we were just talking about, which, dare I use the word, is something called love. Most parents, not all, sadly, most parents are besotted with a new baby and all set to be besotted with that child as it becomes an older baby. That besotment sometimes changes a bit in toddlerhood, because the beauty of toddlers is that they learn to say no and me do it and go away. And some parents don't like that. I like it very much. I think it's funny in my own children or other people's, but a lot of parents don't. But I think what hasn't changed is really why we have babies at all. We actually want that close human connection. And the fact that it's difficult, more difficult than we expected, is something that this book is trying to help with.
Because you want to get back to the core experience, which is that loving and, wanted experience. But there are a tremendous amount of things that kind of get in the way of that when you feel, and you pointed this out earlier, my mom had children late. She had a career, and she said, I used to have a room full of people who just did what I said on command. And now I have 3 little maniacs who literally, I can't get them to get off the kitchen table, whatever it is. And I think that the overall unchanged thing about the book is that what you want to do is get past the problems so that you can get back to some idea of love and connection with kids.
Yes, that's exactly. I mean, thank you. That's how I would have put it if I'd managed it. But yes, and why it's difficult is that you start talking about love between parents and children and it all gets a bit soppy. But Bowlby and indeed Freud both described that relationship as the strongest love relationship in the world. And it is. And I think it helps if people know that. It really doesn't matter if you're irritated because, I don't know, your dinner party was interrupted again by this 3-year-old who won't stay in his room. It matters at the time, but it doesn't matter in the long run. Because nobody's going to remember that evening, when he's a big boy. And being a big boy is where it's going, or a big girl. And what kind of person is it going to be? And that's one of the most exciting things in the world.
We've been talking to Dr. Penelope Leach. Her book, Your Baby and Child, is just out in a completely redone new format. Dr. Leach, tell us where our listeners can find you on the internet.
Via the book, actually. I don't have a website. There's a lot. If you Google Penelope Leach, you find lots of stuff about the books. I don't work on social media, so I'm very grateful to be made welcome on yours. And thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And we will put links up to where to find the book. And this is a book that, helped shape our lives and will continue helping to shape the lives of children going forward. And we're just really honored to get to talk to you today. So thanks so much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.